Hey everyone. So I had a pretty long commute into work this summer, and I'd taken the time to listen to as many albums as possible. I was listening to at least two a day and ended up listening to 104 albums in 10 weeks. So I thought I might throw together a YouTube video just organizing all my thoughts on the albums I listened to. I did some light data analysis, and the things I learned by doing this. So here's some brief history on the album. It was invented in 1738 by John Album, and here's some notable quotes. I hope I'm not quoted in a YouTube video. This is a dumb bit. August 12th, 2036, Heat Death of the Universe. So thank you, John Album, for your contribution to music. Anyway, I keep track of everything in a spreadsheet with 2 pages. One page for my first impressions and one page for my updated thoughts as I re-listen to the albums and listen to the songs on the albums. I also have my scale up here and some descriptions for what each score might mean. This is not necessarily exactly how I feel about the album, but it's generally helps me describe how I feel about it and helps me decide on the scores. I also color coded it all by artist as well. So, in general, I would say that anything above a 5 I enjoyed to at least some degree. And anything over 7 I would say I liked overall. And if you're looking for recommendations, I would say try listening to anything 7 or higher. It's a lot of albums, I know. So if you're really strapped for time, just pick and choose whatever sounds interesting. And for albums I gave like 7 or like 6.5 or whatever, you might end up liking them more than me. And some albums that I gave like scores in that area, I could easily see growing on me in the future, which I will talk more about them as we get through them. And yeah, so I made 2 Spotify playlists, which I will link in the description. First one on the left, I limited to 3 songs per album. I didn't even include every album on there because as I was making the playlist, it got really bloated, and I really had to cut it down. And even then, I thought the playlist was still a little long, so I cut it down to a second playlist of just 1 song per album that I really enjoyed. So that one's just 15 songs, and yeah, both these will be linked in the description, and you can listen to either of these playlists. And if you hear a song you like, consider listening to the whole album because all of the albums that are featured on these playlists are all pretty solid. Now to the albums. So I'm going to go in alphabetic order by artist just to organize my thoughts on some of the albums I listened to. I won't have a ton to say about some of these albums, so I'll try to go quick through the ones I don't have a lot to say. So 100 gecs. I really promise I went into an open mind with this one. I decided I shouldn't blindly hate 100 gecs, especially since I liked Weezer's Blue album, which I will talk about later. So I decided to listen to 1000 gecs. And I only heard 2 songs that I thought were bare minimum tolerable. And this is without a doubt the worst album I've ever heard in my entire life. So I'm really sorry. I went into this one with an open mind, but I really can't get behind it, like at all. I was able to sit through Stupid Horse and Hand Crushed by Mallet without wanting to turn the album off, and that's really about as much as I can say about it. The album's like 23 minutes, but it really was a struggle. I gave it a 2 out of 10, which is starting real low for the first album, I know, but just bear with me here. And now, Get Rich or Die Trying by 50 Cent. This album's a true hip-hop classic in my opinion. Obviously, I'd listened to like Many Men, Into Club, PIMP, 21 Questions. Everyone's heard those songs before, but I really want to listen to the whole thing. It's got great production, catchy hooks. You know, he's definitely not in the running for greatest lyricist of all time, but he's pretty good. He does a pretty good job on this album, and it's enjoyable from start to finish. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. And now, Tribe Called Quest. Starting with the Low End Theory. I liked it a decent amount. It definitely shows its age, where I think some songs, there wasn't much variety in the rhyme schemes, but there's still some good flows and solid beats. I really like the old school feel it had, which, you know, obviously it's an album from the 90s. So I gave it an 8 out of 10. And then I listened to We Got It From Here, Thank You For Your Service. I liked a little bit more than Low End Theory. I think the production was a bit better. Like the wordplay a little more. Features list was a little better. So I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. But both these albums I definitely want to re-listen to, because I've had a few songs on repeat from both of them. and I really think they'll grow on me. So A$AP Rocky up next. I don't have a lot to say about Testing and Live Love A$AP, just solid hip hop. I gave both albums 8 out of 10. So friends of mine had told me to listen to all the Billie Eilish albums, so I decided to do just that. I started with When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? I thought it was really good. I really loved the production, the general vibes of the album. I thought it was pretty unique, and it was kind of up my alley. Happier Than Ever and Hit Me Hard and Soft I didn't really like as much. I gave them both 7 out of 10s. Like, they're solid, but it's not really for me. Now, I remember seeing a tweet that Billy Woods was one of the best rappers out right now. And after listening to a good amount of albums by him, I can say that I can agree. I'm not sure where he would fit in a top 10 list, and I'd rather not have to go through the stress of doing all that. Like, even giving these ratings to the albums are hard enough. But starting with Church, really creative production, not in like a JPEG Mafia kind of way, which, not a diss to him. I love his music, so I'll talk about him later. Good flows, great writing. Two things about Billy Woods that I really like. It's really good. He's really good at conjuring up visual imagery with his words, and it comes across that he's pretty well read, which can be seen on songs like on this album, like Artichoke. I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. I'm also grouping up the Arm & Hammer projects in here too, because I don't want to make a whole separate thing, because I'm going to say a lot of the same stuff. So here's We Buy Diabetic Test Strips. Not much to say that I haven't already, but great production. Aethiopes. Really love the songs with LP and Despot. Asylums. Great example of a song of his that conjures up visual imagery. I really loved how he used like metaphors and stuff on this one. Also an 8.5 out of 10. I forget if I said, but this one was an 8 out of 10 for me. We Buy Diabetic Test Strips. Next up, History Will Absolve Me. This is probably my favorite album by him. Really love the production, the energy he brings on songs like Crocodile Tears. It was 9 out of 10 for me. Now Haram. I don't know if I can post the album art on YouTube, so just to be safe, I've covered up the severed pig heads with pig emojis. I thought the production by Alchemist was good, and I like the flows that they used to get on this one. It was also an 8 out of 10 for me. This one's also recommended to me by a friend, Endless Summer by Black Party. It wasn't really my vibe, but I thought it was pretty decent. I gave it a 6 out of 10. And then Brat by Charlie XCX. This album's at everywhere the past few months. The Brat Summer, obviously. I listened to it off a recommendation of a few friends. I liked it a good amount. Really creative production. Catchy lyrics. 8.5 out of 10. I got to do a full listen again soon. It might go up. I'm not sure. But I have been liking it. I have been listening to it a lot. Oh, and if you haven't checked it out, Amine did a remix of 360, which I've been listening to that one a lot too. So yeah. Next up, Almighty So 2 by Chief Keef. This one's probably one of Chief Keef's best albums in recent years, but I think there are some duds in the track list, but the highlights are definitely great. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Childish Gambino. First, Ada Vista. I like the production a lot, especially on songs like Algorithm and Final Church. I don't really remember much of 3:15:20, but I think this one's better. The songs having no titles on that one made it really hard to go back to or remember its best moments. So, at least for that reason, Ada Vista's better. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Band of Stone in the New World. I like the direction he took with this one. Like 2 songs gave me Weezer vibes on this one, which I liked. But there's definitely some crazy rap bangers on here, like Yoshinoya. This is an 8 out of 10, maybe 8.5. I gotta do another re-listen for this one. Hell Hath No Fury by Clips. This is another one I also need to re-listen to because I think it didn't really click with me in first listen, but I think will stick better now. Good production from Pharrell and good verses from Pusha T and Mouse. I give it a 7.5 out of 10 originally, but this is an 8 at now, and maybe an 8.5 if I give it another re-listen. Now Common. The first album I listened to by Common was B. Amazing production on this one. Like, just imagine being able to boast that your album features only production from like 2004 Kanye and Jay Dilla, and he brings some great verses too. One thing I really like about Common is that it's all just good vibes in listening to his music. I think it's impossible to be mad or angry listening to him sometimes. And I initially thought this album was a 9.5 out of 10, but on re-listen, I decided to just bump it up to a 10. It really just is that good. Now, his new album, The Auditorium Volume 1, great verses, great beats. It's always great to hear when an artist keeps putting out great music so late into their career. This will be seen when I talk about Nas later. And I'm actually going to go see him live because of how good this album was. I've still got B over it for sure, but this one is also a solid 9 out of 10. One Day It All Makes Sense. I really like the production. Had some solid verses. Was an 8.5 out of 10 for me. The Lost Boy by Cordae. I've heard a good chunk of this before, but I want to do a full listen. It's definitely solid. I'm just waiting for Cordae to really put out a project to blow me away, because he's definitely really talented, but I don't think he's really knocked out of the park in the way I think he can. Either way, I think it's an 8.5 out of 10. Triple X by Danny Brown. So Danny Brown has come a long way in the past 10 years, but this album is still pretty solid. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10 initially, but it's been growing on me. I think it's about an 8 out of 10 these days for me. I still need to do a full re-listen, because I've only been listening to like some of the songs here and there. But Atrocity Exhibition is definitely still my favorite album by him for far. Okay. King of the Mischievous South Volume 2 by Denzel Curry. You know me, it's no surprise I like this one. My only complaint, there's only like 6 songs, not counting the interludes, that were new, although Sked did get a new verse. I wish we got more, but this is still pretty solid with good production. Denzel's consistency and versatility are unmatched. You could pick any of albums as your favorite and nobody would get mad. This one was a 9 out of 10 for me, which is like even though it's a 9 out of 10, I think it's still probably like his like 4th best album, which is kind of insane to have a discography like that. Anyway, Heartstone Psycho by Don Toliver. I was really excited for this one. I thought it was going to be amazing after hearing Bandit. And then I heard the first 2 tracks, and I'm like, oh my god, this album's going to be so crazy. But then the rest was kind of painfully boring. And I've lost like faith in like Don Toliver's ability to make a good album, because he's just so good on other people's songs. But I don't know, maybe just Heaven or Hell just set the bar too high. But none of his albums I feel like have really delivered. They haven't really reached the highs that one had. But yeah, I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. Some Rap Songs by Earl Sweatshirt. I can see why a lot of people really like this album, but I don't really think it's for me. Maybe it'll click the more I listen to it though, since I did at least like most of the songs. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10, but we'll see if that changes in the future. Cancer for Cure by LP. LP is just so good, man. The beats are insane on this one. Now, in terms of white rapper producers, he's a better producer than Eminem, and I would say better rapper, but that's kind of just personal preference. I'm just not really a big Eminem fan, and anything his hands touch just ends up being so good. This album was a 9 out of 10 for me. We Still Don't Trust You by Future and Metro Boomin. Honestly, I don't really know why this album had to be an hour and a half. First disc was just really long, and it got a bit repetitive for me, and it would have been an 8.5 out of 10 if it was just a bit shorter. Second disc was great though. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Plastic Beach by Gorillaz. This one was also recommended to me by a friend. Thought it was pretty decent. Realized I heard a few of the songs before when I was listening. I was surprised at some of the features they got on this one. 7.5 out of 10 for me though. Still like pretty solid. Okay, Y2K by Ice Spice. Yeah, this sucks. Bad writing, bad flows, mediocre production, except for a few tracks. But it seems that there's like an inverse relationship between how good the beat is and how bad the flows are and the bars are. Which also, why are there so many poop bars in the second half? Like there was like 2 songs that I thought were all right. I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. All right, on to IDK. The motto for IDK's albums is definitely quality over quantity. A lot of them are really short, but almost every song is great. Simple, really great. Love the Kaytranada production. You See For Yourself was also solid. Although I think some of the bonus tracks are some of the best on the album. IDK and Friends and some stellar beats and verses as well. All three of these albums are 8.5 out of 10s for me. IDK and Friends 2 was also solid for the same reasons, but I think it's a bit weaker, so I give it an 8 out of 10. I think Is He Real is probably his best album, though. Definitely the most like cohesive, I feel, in terms of like the messaging and themes and stuff. I think that production, the verses are some of his best, even though some songs are definitely a bit short. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Okay, Injury Reserve. Injury Reserve is one of the artists that I'm really glad I did this like I listened to all these albums during my commute, because Injury Reserve, I'm really glad that I was able to find the time to listen to their music because of this, right? Because I probably wouldn't have gotten into them if I wasn't looking for so many albums to listen to. And I definitely they've definitely become one of my favorite artists. I'll get into that a bit later. But starting with Live from the Dentist Office, it's really fun. The way you can tell that they're enjoying making this in the creative production kind of reminds me of the Brockhampton Saturation Trilogy. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Floss had really good production with high energy. I liked it a little bit more than Live from the Dentist Office, so I gave it a 9 out of 10. Self-titled, they experiment a lot with their sound. It really works for them. I also give this one a 9 out of 10. Okay. Now for By the Time I Get to Phoenix. So if you're not aware, prior to this album, one of the members of Injury Reserve, which Injury Reserve is a group made up of 3 members, one of whom was Groggs, and prior to the release of the album, Groggs had unfortunately passed away, and I feel like it really influenced the sound of this album. It has its crazy hype moments, but also its incredibly somber ones with insane production all around. I never would have thought an album like that sounds like this could stir up like the kinds of emotions it does. Top Picks for You is probably one of the most powerful songs I've ever heard in my entire life. I had originally given it a 9 out of 10, but with every listen it grows on me more and more. Right now for me it's a 9.5 out of 10, but I think one day it'll probably end up being a 10 out of 10, because even the songs I wasn't crazy about initially, like Ground Zero, have kind of been growing on me a bit. And I actually like this. I've bought a good amount of the albums I've heard on this during this whole thing on vinyl. I got I got Illmatic, I got B, but I also got this one in particular. This one, they don't make it anymore, so I had to buy it from third party. But I spent like $80 on it, just because I really like this album. And I would say it probably shouldn't be the first album you listen to from Injury Reserve, but I really recommend this one. Now Jay-Z up next, starting with The Blueprint. I thought it was pretty solid with good production from Kanye. But to me, I don't really think it's as good as it's hyped up to be. I think that it's an 8 out of 10 at best. However, a Jay-Z album that I do think is deserving of the praise that The Blueprint has is 444. Incredible beats from No ID and some really good and mature verses from Jay-Z that really get his ideas and advice across well. And if it's his last album, it would be the perfect one to end it off on. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Now, Joey Badass. I like 1999, especially the more chill songs. There's great rapping from Joey and everyone else on Pro Era. I thought pretty much the same thing about 2000, but oh my god, Survivor's Guilt is amazing. I know I just said this about Top Picks for You, but Injury Reserve, but Survivor's Guilt is also one of the most powerful songs I've ever heard. They both talk about death in completely different ways, but they're just so good at it. Like, just like when I hear like the synths on Top Picks for You, or the drum loop on like 2000, like late at night, like driving, like I don't know, man, like it just stirs something within me, man. I feel like I'm about to like start crying or whatever. But both of these Joey Badass albums were both 8 out of 10s for me, which might seem kind of odd considering the praise that I just gave Survivor's Guilt. But I think the rest of the album is just pretty solid, so it's kind of in the same boat as the ASAP Rocky albums. But Survivor's Guilt, like don't sleep on that song. I think that's probably like his best song. No Hands by Joey Valence and Bray. I listened to this one off the recommendation of another friend, and the best way I can kind of describe it is EDM inspired hip hop, or maybe JPEG Mafia, but by white people. Either way, everything from the beats to the bars just radiates fun. It rarely, if ever, really takes itself seriously. I liked it a good amount. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Now, speaking of JPEG Mafia, I listened to a lot of albums and EPs by him that I hadn't gotten around to listening to him before. It's one of my most listened to artists last year, and I even saw him live too. And Scaring the Hose was probably my album of the year for 2023. So starting with Offline, I hadn't really listened to all the way through before because I thought it was just an LP deluxe. Yeah, well, it has a lot of the same tracks like a deluxe would. I think Director's Cut would be a more apt name for it. I gave it a 9 out of 10, but I might want to re-listen to because it might be a 9.5 out of 10, and I gotta see which one I prefer between Offline and the new album. Now, Black Ben Carson, this album's kind of weird. Like, I normally like JPEG Mafia production, but some of these beats are a bit too weird for my taste. And some songs are just really edgy. Like, more so than Veteran, which I think was also kind of an edgy album. Overall, though, I would say I enjoyed it. I just don't see myself coming back to it outside of maybe like Drake era. I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. I gave EP1 and EP2 about 7.5 out of 10s. I really don't have much to say about them. I heard some of the songs as singles before, and they're pretty good. I did drop the score from an 8 to a 7.5 on re-listen since I don't think it held up to other albums I'd given 8s. For I Laid Down My Life For You, at first I didn't really like it as much as Offline, but now I'm not really sure. I gave it a 9.5, but as I said earlier, Offline might be a 9.5 as well. Regardless, I really liked the production and how he used the guitars on it. I liked how the albums had both songs like Sin Miedo and Either On or Off the Drugs, the latter of which has an insane sample. Now, Vultures 2 by Kanye West. Okay, so at first I liked it more than Vultures 1, but I don't know if that's really saying much since I did not like Vultures 1, like, at all. And I thought that while Kanye didn't make as many terrible verses, a lot of the verses don't sound like Kanye. Like, either he's using flows and bars that either don't seem like his style, or there's at least one song that really sounded like it was AI. And after re-listen, yeah, I don't think he was even present in the studio making this album. Like, at first I'd only heard one song that sounded like AI, but I think it's definitely more than one, or just the mixing is just absolutely atrocious to the point where it sounds like he's AI. Ty Dolla $ign doesn't stand out like last time. If we got an album produced by Kanye that was just Ty Dolla $ign, this album would have been pretty good. But there's not really any songs on this one that I want to rip my ears out like for Vultured 1. I'm looking at you, Hood Rat, and Back to Me. But it's just as bad in its own way. So I give this one a 4 out of 10. Now let's talk about an actually good album. Michael and the Mighty Midnight Revival, Songs for Sinners and Saints. Kind of a mouthful of a title, but he really knocked it out of the park with this one. Michael was great. I thought this was one of the better releases of last year. But he went to a higher level here, if you excuse the pun. Great production, great verses, great storytelling. Even though he used a couple tracks on Michael here, I thought the change production and features really brought up the versions that are on this album. Really the backing vocals and choruses, especially on songs like Nobody Knows, has bangers, and Offset on the Exit 9 remix was insane. Not a single weak point in the track list here. All the features are great. All we need now is Run the Jewels 5, please. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Now Tech by Lil Tecca. Really like the production. The transition between the tracks are insane. Very vibey. It's grown on me. I gave it an 8.5 initially, but on re-listen it became a 9 out of 10. Love is Rage 2 by Lil Uzi Vert. I'd listened to a good chunk of this album before. As did if you were like alive during this time that the album came out, you've probably heard a good amount too. But I thought I might as well give it a full listen. It's pretty good, fun beats, generally good vibes. 8.5 out of 10. Ultra 85 by Logic, the long-awaited album. I think it's probably his best album since No Pressure, although I still prefer that album. I'll talk a bit about it later, even though I didn't listen or at least re-listen to it this year. Although I do plan on doing a re-listen eventually. Ultra 85, however, 9 out of 10 for me. I think it needs more time to sit with me though, since it's between an 8.5 and a 9 for me. But I'm leaning slightly closer to a 9. Yeah, it's a pretty solid album. Lupe Fiasco next. So I'd heard the concept of Samurai, his latest album, being Amy Winehouse if she was a battle rapper, and became intrigued. And I already known about Lupe Fiasco's lyrical ability, but I was really blown away by this one. The jazz-inspired production, the crazy flows, the rhyme schemes, the variety of sounds that he tackled in this one was just astounding. I gave it a 10 out of 10. It's just really good. I'm going to go see him live to perform this album next month. But yeah, really good. Alright, Drill Music in Zion. I liked it a lot. No bangers on it, but really clever wordplay and great production. Liked the use of the horns on the album. Pretty chill. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Now, the cool, you're going to just hear me say this over and over again, but I cannot understate just how good Lupe's lyricism is. On this one, production is pretty good. I really loved Little Weapon. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10, but I think I might need to revisit this one. Now, Lasers. I think the verses and ideas for the songs were good as always, but I didn't really like the production on this one. It felt like he was just kind of chasing the trends at the time. Felt pretty commercial. And I feel the same way about Drogas Light. So I gave them both 8 out of 10s. Tetsuo in Youth is what I consider to be his second best album. Really like the production. Great verses as usual. You know, one thing that I appreciate about Lupe is that he's one of the few artists to rap about complex issues while doing what I like to call triple backflips with his verses. And the only complaint is that the songs are a bit long for playlists, but I think this is more of an album you just listen to in full anyway, rather than just playlist music. So I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Drogas Wave is also solid. Compared to Drogas Light, he plays more to his strengths production-wise. It's a bit long, but it ends right before it comes to Slog. I give it a 9 out of 10. And for Food and Liquor, I thought it was solid. Versus and production, not as good as other albums he's made, which makes sense. This one came out way earlier, so I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Now, Rich Ass Haitian by Makami. It was pretty solid. Some good verses. While the production was kind of odd at times, none of it was bad or even boring. I want to revisit this one before the year ends to see more if it'll click with me more, because I have heard a lot of people have this album as their album of the year, and I want to see if it'll click with me more. But for now, it's an 8.5 out of 10. Endure by Mario Judah. So I literally found out he dropped earlier this year, and I had completely forgotten he existed. I saw it was 15 minutes, and I'm like, might as well just give it a listen. The lyrics and vocals were really cringe. The production was alright, though. I gave it a 3 out of 10. It's not really worth a listen unless you really want to listen. If you want to listen to something bad for fun. Laughing So Hard It Hurts by Mavi. I'd never heard of him before, but a friend recommended this album to me. This album's really good. Not one dud in the track list, just really solid overall. 9 out of 10 for me. Ride the Lightning by Metallica. I had this one recommended to me by another friend, but I might have ended up listening to this one anyway, but I don't know if I'd gotten around to it if I hadn't done this whole listen to as many albums as possible during my commute thing. I probably wouldn't have gotten around to it. Anyway, big fan of anything with guitars, so really like this one. It was 9.5 out of 10 for me. Now, MF Doom. Starting with Food. I thought it was solid. Didn't really blow me away or anything. It has its moments, though. 7.5 out of 10. Then The Mouse and the Mask, which had good production, solid verses. Not a whole lot to say for me. 8 out of 10. Operation Doomsday was alright, although it's definitely far from being my favorite Doom album. So I gave it a 7 out of 10. Take to Your Leader, on the other hand, is definitely one of my favorites by him. I like the production on songs like Phaser and Fastlane, and it was an 8.5 out of 10 for me. In Dimes We Trust by Mike Dimes. Pretty good production, pretty good rapping. Like the flows he used. 8.5 out of 10. Mos Def. I'd listened to both of these albums, because I listened to two, off the recommendation of a friend. And Black on Both Sides first. And I thought it was really good. And I feel like he's not talked about enough for how good he is. Because this album was just fantastic. My mind was just blown when I heard the song Hip Hop for the first time. Because the beat on that song and just the album in general was just really good. I gave it a 9 out of 10 initially, but it really grew on me on re-listen, so it's a 9.5 out of 10 for me now. Black Star, I also thought this one was solid. I really like when they go back and forth in the verses. That's one of my favorite things to see whenever rappers collaborate. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. I can see for sure why people love this album. I thought it was great too. Don't get me wrong. But I thought her verses were great. Her singing was amazing. But I really think it needs more time to click with me. But it's definitely been growing me more and more. It's an 8 out of 10 at first listen, but now it's an 8.5 out of 10. Yeah, pretty solid album. Faith of the Mustard Seed by Mustard. Solid beats and verses from featured artists, but there's not a whole lot to say about it. I gave it an 8 out of 10. The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance, also recommended to me by a friend. The vocals didn't really click with me on some of the songs, but I thought it was a pretty good experience overall. I liked the instrumentals a lot. It was very 2000 sound, which makes sense. Came out in 2006. But it was about a 7.5 out of 10 for me. Now, Nas. I'd listened to King Disease before starting this thing, and since I really loved it, I decided to listen to King Disease 2 and 3. King Disease 2 is pretty solid. Great verses, great production. Kind of thought the same thing about King Disease 3. I will say, though, I do prefer King Disease 3 slightly over King Disease 2, although that's not to say they doesn't have its standout tracks. The Pressure and Death Row East in particular off King Disease 2 were both kind of standout. I prefer King Disease 1 to both of them, though. It just felt like a much more fun album to me. I gave King Disease 2 an 8 out of 10 and King Disease 3 an 8.5 out of 10. Now, Illmatic. This one was great. I'd obviously heard NY State of Mind and The World Is Yours before, but these just really clicked with me here. NY State of Mind in particular might be one of the best rap songs of all time. There's not a single bad song on this album, and I think the level of quality here is insane, especially considering his age when he released this album. Now, I'd originally given it a 9, but some of the songs grew on me even more, so it's a 9.5 out of 10 now. And if someone said this album was 10 out of 10, I would absolutely not disagree. Now, Outkast. AT-Aliens was good with some solid rapping performances, although production didn't really click with me. I gave it an 8 out of 10. For Aquemini, I can see why people think it's their best, but I don't really think so. It's still great. I like the beats on this one a lot more. Not every song clicked with me. The ones that did hit hard. For Outkast, common themes that I really love the songs where they're able to tell a story, and that's definitely here on this album. I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. Then Stankonia. I think this one is their best. I really messed with the production style in this one. I gave it most of the same praise as Aquemini, but I just like the production a lot more. I gave it a 9 out of 10 for me. Speaker Box. I definitely really love the production on this one as well. It starts out really strong, but I think falls off towards the end. Big Boy does a good job on his half of the album. For the Love Below, it's good, but it's not really my type of vibe. I think I'd give Speaker Box like an 8.5 and the Love Below like a 7.5 to an 8. But I think overall 8.5 feels about right. Now, Only Built for Cuban Links by Raekwon. I like this project. RZA had good beats. Raekwon dropped some solid verses. Features pretty solid. Overall, pretty good album. Not much I can say other than that. I give it an 8 out of 10. Rage Against the Machine. I love their self-titled. Idol Empire is great, so I decided to listen to the rest of their albums. Battle of Los Angeles is great, but I thought it was definitely one of their weaker projects. I just didn't really mess with it, a lot of the songs, as much as their self-titled. This one was an 8.8 out of 10 for me. Renegades had an incredible start, but then it kind of fell apart in the second half, where it's kind of mixed bag in terms of quality. But I think most of the songs are still pretty solid overall. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10 initially, but I think these days it's more of an 8 out of 10. Red Veil next, starting with Learn to Swim. Great beats, love that he produced it himself. Some pretty solid verses. Really excited to see where he goes from here. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Same thing to say about Niagara as well. Also an 8.5 out of 10. Bittersweet Cry and Playing with Fire, both fun projects. Gave me 8 out of 10. Not a whole lot to say. 11th Dimension by Ski Mask. 2018 Ski Mask over modern production. Not one bad song, although I do wish he would have evolved his style more, but it's still as impressive now as it was 6 years ago. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Iowa by Slipknot. If I had to describe this album, it would be like the picture of Venom dunking on Spider-Man, or like the music you could listen to in Destroy Kids Sandcastle 2. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Currents by Tame Impala. I enjoyed it, although a lot of it didn't really click with me. I for sure I need to revisit this one. For now, it's 7 out of 10, but I will for sure revisit this one because I really can see it growing on me. Ready to Die by Biggie. I can see why this one's a classic. A issue I've had with a few classic hip hop albums is that the production doesn't really hold up in the modern day. That's definitely not the case here. Beats on this album feel like they could have come out way later and nobody would have batted an eye. So I gave it a 9 out of 10. Now, Vince Staples, Big Fish Theory. Incredible production, good verses. Beats sound really forward thinking. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I thought Self-Titled was solid, although I like the energy and beats on Big Fish Theory a lot more. This one is an 8 out of 10. Feel the same way about Dark Times, although I did like them more than the Self-Titled. Verses on Dark Times are better as well, but so I give that one 8.5 out of 10. So Summertime '06, also in the same boat. And for both of these albums, the production's not bad at all. I just really need to stress just how good the beats on Big Fish Theory are. So I gave Summertime '06 an 8.5 out of 10 as well. Now, the Blue Album by Weezer. Really gave me early 2000s vibes, which I guess technically means they were ahead of their time. Either way, album pretty solid. Grew on me a decent amount. Originally it was just a 7 out of 10, but it's a 7.5 now. And I think I need to do a re-listen at some point to see if it goes up as well. Now, Pray for Paris by Westside Gunn. Solid. Didn't really click with me that much. I ended up giving it a 7.5 out of 10. It's alright. And then You Pray for Me, on the other hand. Really clicked with me. On first listen was a 9 out of 10, but eventually became a 9.5 out of 10. And I haven't gone to re-listen to Pray for Paris since listening to And Then You Pray for Me. But I definitely plan on it because I really like this album. And yeah, and finally we're ending with 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang Clan. And it holds up for sure. Each member has a ton of charisma. RZA has great production. Give it 9 out of 10. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of data that we can really go through here. Here I have the two CSVs that I pretty much took straight from the spreadsheet. And here, there's all the first impressions. Here's the CSV of all of the updated stuff, updated scores and everything. And then first thing I did was load them into pandas and pretty much create a combined CSV with all these scores in it, just to make my work easier. Plotted a histogram of the distribution of the scores. Updated ratings in blue, first impressions in orange. Ratings seem to be left skewed, and the reason for this is that I only really listened to albums that I knew I would enjoy to some degree, with a few exceptions, so obviously the scores were probably going to be a bit on the higher end on average. And for that reason, the mean looked about 8.14 for the updated, and the first impression 8.13. Median around 8.5, meaning the most common score was 8.5, 8, around that area, right? Now, if we separate them by artist, we can see the mean first impressions and the mean rating of each artist here. But you can see here the top two artists here. Actually, yeah, the top three artists here are only have one album that I rated. So I made sure to drop these outliers. And now we can see our top four is now Common, Injury Reserve, Mos Def, and Lupe Fiasco, which are all artists that I really enjoyed listening to over this whole summer, these 10 weeks. So yeah, I think this is pretty accurate. Like, they're definitely my top four new artists that I'd started listening to these 10 weeks. And here, I was looking at how much the mean rating changed from first impressions to the updated version. So once again, we're also having kind of the outlier problem here. However, we can notice here that the largest decrease was for IDK, and the reason for this was that I'd felt that I'd overrated the production on a lot of the songs on first listen, even though the writing was a bit weak on some songs. That's not to say that it's really bad, but I do feel like I was giving a bit too much credit to the production, where the writing was slacking a little bit on some songs here and there. But for a lot of other albums, ended up increasing or decreasing by half points, just because of how they might have grown on or off of me. Uh, but yeah, if you do notice here, Vultures 2 did go from a 5 to a 4, so technically that is the biggest increase. But IDK has 5 albums, and the score went down by minus 0.3. Whereas Kanye has just one, so I consider Kanye to be an outlier here. But yeah, that's about it for the data analysis. Like, as I said, there's not a whole lot of stuff to do. Not a whole lot of columns in the data, so maybe I could go and add some more columns, like the year the album's released, the genres, and all that, and maybe we could get some more interesting insights. But that's a bit more work than I really feel like doing. Yeah, I also thought I'd share some of the songs that I noticed either shared samples or one sampled the other. I'm not going to play them because of YouTube copyright reasons, but I've decided to just list them out here. And if someone wants to go through these and just like listen and see if they can hear it, and here you go. Here's some stuff I noticed. And all right, what I learned from all this. Firstly, I've actually gotten a pretty good appreciation for Logic and No ID, and after hearing 444, it really like hit me how good of a producer like No ID was. But I actually like really like started to appreciate both of them by listening to like more albums that didn't feature No ID or Logic on them. And you'd hear like samples like every once in a while, like, oh, like I remember like this sample was also used on this song on No Pressure, right? Or like other Logic songs and stuff like that. And I'm not even a big Logic fan like that, so there's probably like a ton of more songs that I'm missing. But it really like showed to me like Logic and like just his producers and No ID, like they really appreciate hip hop, and they know its history, which also goes into my second point about that hip hop really is just a massive genre. There's a lot more to listen to. And I see people say that it's fallen off or getting stale all the time, but it seems like these people only really listen to like the same artists that in the mainstream. And finally, I'd recommend doing this like 100%. You don't even need to have a long commute. Just make a spreadsheet or even rate anything. Just listening to a new album when washing dishes, cleaning, studying. Listen to albums from artists you like, artists you haven't heard of before, or artists that you kind of like, but you haven't really had a chance to dive into their discography before. Listen to classics, listen to outside your favorite genres, which is probably something I should do more myself. But just give more things a chance in general. And yeah, we've reached the end. I'm not sure if I'll make more of these types of videos in the future. If I have a idea that might be fun, or if I really want to share my thoughts on something, I might do this again. But if you stuck through this, just thanks for watching. This video is a bit of a yap fest on my end, but if you did watch it, I really appreciate it. And yeah, just let me know your thoughts. If you want to see more of this, just let me know in the comments. Yep, thanks. Goodbye.